Hello, I think I'm live. Although I think I'm looking in the wrong direction because I'm using this iPad and my eyes are drawn in the wrong way. I should be talking to the camera that side. Maybe that's a bit better. Yeah, maybe I'm talking to the camera now. Hello, I'm in the garage and I'm just looking at some of the projects I'm working on at the moment, and also a view of a terrain table we were playing on Friday night, which was for a game called The Rules With No Name, which is a Western game. So I'm going to flip the camera around and I'll talk through that. Apologies for the noises. I'm in my garage, which means there's thousands of children and other local British people hanging around outside and making general Sunday noises. Anyway, without further ado, I shall flip the screen. Aha! Ah, that's more like it. The face is no longer on display. So this is a Western game. It's the remains of a game, actually. If I step back so you can see the whole terrain table. It's half of a table tennis table, by the way. I used to have a table tennis table in here we used for gaming generally, and it got old and a bit warped and things, and I decided to just sort of pull it apart. So we pulled the legs off it, but I'm using an old medical cabinet I picked off eBay to use it for a handy stand with the remains of the table tennis table. So you can see it's conveniently on wheels, and essentially I just clamp it. So remove the clamp, and then the table tennis tabletop goes to the side. In fact, I have another one of these cabinets which is also full of junk. Yeah, so there you go. Anyway, those are the boxes, and back to the game. So what's all this about? It's a Brian Ansell game. You'll find it for sale on the War Games Foundry website. It's a pretty popular Western set of rules. They're relatively accessible, I'd say. They're not too difficult to learn. I was initially a bit challenged by the shotgun rules in it because they deviate from what's the normal attack method for shooting in the game. So you have to sort of roll twice for each barrel and then see where the barrel's spread is, which is pretty interesting given that it is a powerful weapon in the game, so it's worth having those individual rules. But initially I thought, oh, it's a bit unnecessary jumping to an extra set of rules for a different weapon type, but it worked okay. So what are the principle of the game? So the principle is you draw a card, and the cards, which they've got some samples in here actually, I think near the back. You draw a card that represents each individual character. The characters range from civilians up to sort of legends and gunfighters in between. And when you pick the card, you take an action for that particular character. The benefit being that you get a totally random sequence. I'm trying to find my cards now. I think I may have packed them away, but oh no, they'll be over there. Aha! So yeah, here are the cards themselves. So each turn you keep this deck face down, and depending on which characters you put into your posse, you would flip it over. So if I pick this one up, in fact this guy's been upgraded to a gunman, he was originally a citizen. You flip him over and that character can take an action. They can move and shoot. And I use some of the old Foundry models that I've got here, which are, you know, they're not the most amazingly detailed, and they're properly sort of 28mm scale, but they're a nice set of models. You also get a few with a shotgun. So I had this lady shooting that shotgun on the Friday night game. The buildings themselves are all from foreground. So as you can see here, these are foreground, pre-painted, and you just sort of put them together and they have all the little posters and things ready to go. So you're looking at the Undertakers here. It's got plenty of detail on there and on the inside too. And you can see the foreground terrain has this sort of double skin, which is quite unique in the MDF terrain world, meaning you're doing the interior and an exterior. It gives it a lot more strength. And you see that's where the stairs go in there. So plenty of interesting places to roam around. In this game we had Billy the Kid actually, and we ended up with a big fight in this, what we called Rogan's Alley, down this back alley here between Rogan's Bar and another sort of building here. This was a reverend, I think he died. Oh no, he didn't die, he got shot through the guts. Ended up crawling away. So yeah, that was generally, it was a good fun game. And as I say, here are the rules with no name. They're worth a look. Card-based activation, you draw those card from a deck and then you activate the model. They can then move, I think traditionally each model can move 3d6 inches in a straight line. So, you know, you'd whack that down and there you go, 9 inches. You'd be able to move one of these characters. I shall slow down a little bit. Yeah, so if you were moving this particular character here, I think this is Billy the Kid. If I wanted to go in a straight line, you'd roll the 9 inches and he'd have to move anything, because he's a legend, anything between 3 inches and the full 9. But what you can't do is deviate, so you can take a different kind of move action, a 2-inch reposition in any direction, and in which case you can then point to make sure you've got the firing arc for the way you're looking. But if you do that full move of 3d6, when you're at the end of that move, you literally have to be facing the same way you are as you start. So you can't, it feels a little bit restrained when you first start, but you can't sort of move down there and say, well actually I'm facing that way to shoot down the side alley, because you've just done the full move, you've got to be facing that way, then you couldn't be shooting to the side. Then on your next activation you could then do one of the repositions and shoot. Or you can move and shoot, in which case instead of rolling the 3d6 you roll 2. And then that's the 2d6 movement, and then you can shoot in your firing arc at the end of that move. So it's quite interesting set of rules, quite easy to play. You know, you don't need a posse. You could start with say 6 characters, 6 models aside, and also have some of the civilians moving at the same time. So that was the game we had on Friday night. Other things that have been going on, I've got some of the Shade Spire models. I don't know how well that's going to zoom in. So these are Games Workshop models for the Shade Spire game. I've rebased them because I have a sort of standard where I like to use the lipped bases, and also I'll be using these in other games like Song of Blades and Heroes and anything else, Battle Lust or anything else that takes my fancy. I'm not a big fan. I have played Shade Spire, I wasn't a big fan of it as a game. Found it quite simple, I think is the best way to put it, and restricted on the tiles. So I picked up, this is another Games Workshop, this is from the Age of Sigmar model, and I've added these nice nameplate tags to the bottom of all the models as well. And to be fair, I've added my own names on there. So some of the, as you can see, some of these guys here have got kind of slightly comical names. That one's Stiffy, Death Clock, sort of classic bad naming of undead. Wormy Bollocks, and then I think this is the leader model, Grateful Dead I've called him. So these are something I was going to do a full video on, but just as a quick introduction, these are from Versatile Terrain in the UK. A guy called Keith at Versatile Terrain is running a small company where he's producing these nameplates, and you just go on the website versatileterrain.co.uk, I think it is, and add on all the names that you want to use. So I sort of picked all these odd names for these guys. Some of them I was a bit more serious, coming up with sort of interesting fantasy names. And they can then print them, 3D print, so they come on a kind of a raised sprue that you clip off, and they fit perfectly on the side of the lipped base. But he also does them for the sort of traditional straight 25mm bases as well. So you've got a whole mix that you can do. So these are in the garage today for some spraying, because I've done all the mounting on the base and they're ready to take a primer and then some airbrushing. This is a completely random model that's in there. This is from a company called, I think it's Dust Tactics is the guy, is the company that produced these. They do all the Dust models for the war game, but this one is in their fantasy range. They're just starting, and for the life of me I can't even remember what it's called, but nice looking model, resin. So that's it. Oh yeah, there was one other thing I was going to show. As a sort of a Sunday garage update, I bought some of these, attracted in by the these ragingheroes.com toughest girls of the galaxy. Very nice models, and I ordered a whole batch of various different ones to have a look at, some of them fantasy. As you can see, they tend to be all female and of that kind of pin-up style of model. These ones I was going to use as alternatives in Necromunda. However, big thing with these, which I didn't realise, I even put one together and then realised afterwards, you need to clean this resin. Now normal resin, like this guy, I normally give something like this a soapy, sort of warm water soapy wash. So this guy would have been in the sink with some soap, washed it off, cleaned it, and then went straight to preparing him for the base. These guys, they're kind of oily, difficult to explain. They're really greasy, sort of resiny plastic, and you have to put them in some of this stuff over here. In the UK it's called gunk, but I think in the US they call it evergreen or similar. It's an engine degreaser. So you have to mix warm water with the engine degreaser and slap it in there, slap all the models in there. So those are all my Raging Heroes minis, but they're having an hour's soak in engine degreaser and warm water. When they come out, you've got to wash them again in warm water, soapy warm water, and literally scrub off a residue that's on there. So on this little list here it says rinse them under warm running water, then you've got to wipe them with a towel, and it says, they call it simple green, I think that's the American stuff, but it's I'm using gunk, and the greasy residue become combined in a film that you need to remove by wiping it with a towel. So I'm a bit disappointed, to be frank, with these toughest girls of the galaxy, because you know it's a lot of work, and having to get engine degreaser and stuff to clean up what are essentially expensive models, when you know other expensive resin or even the sort of Games Workshop plastics like these days, you don't have to do any sort of special cleaning with them. So you know, that is disappointing considering how expensive those are. So that's just going to be it really, I think. It was just a general overview. I've got to tidy away this terrain layout now, because I was going to prep for some airbrushing, and also this terrain, I don't like to leave it for a long time out in the garage. I tend to store all of my foreground wooden stuff indoors, just because I don't want any warpage or any other issues from damp on them. And so as you can see, they're nicely double skinned bits of terrain, but I'm sure they can suffer if they start taking on moisture in the garage here, which I do have a very moist garage. Anyway, so let me flip this round. Okay, so thanks for listening in, and yeah, it was a quick update, a live one, and I'll speak to you again soon. Cheers, bye. Now I don't know how to turn off the live stream, so learning education time. So close that. Yes, stopping it. Goodbye.